Ashes of the hunt. Ash drifted through the air like snowfall in a dead man's dream. Commander Ryn Kael crouched beneath the blackened husk of a tree, rifle pressed to his chest, lungs burning. The forest around him, what little remained of it, was silent except for the distant hum of alien scout drones. A low, pulsing sound, steady like a heartbeat. Not human. Never human. He pressed a cracked boot deeper into the mud and whispered to himself, "Stay low. Move quiet." Earth was no longer Earth. After the Velzar came, they turned whole continents into hunting zones. Not for resources, no, that would be too rational. The Velzar hunted for sport. They called it culling the predators. Their twisted idea of balance. Humanity, in their eyes, had evolved too far. Too fast. Too wild. Ryn was one of the last. A soldier from a time before the fall. He'd been fighting since the first orbital strike vaporized New Sydney. That was 12 years ago. Or maybe 15. Time had lost shape out here. He shifted, scanning the ridge above. No movement. No glint of metal. Then, snap. A branch cracked to his left. Ryn spun around, rifle raised, but his trigger finger froze. A shape moved between the trees. Large. Four-legged. Covered in gray fur streaked with soot and blood. It wasn't just a wolf. It was huge, easily the size of a small horse. Muscles like coiled steel, eyes burning with a gold sheen. Ryn didn't breathe. The wolf stepped forward, slow, deliberate, and then stopped. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the ruins of the old world. Then it bowed its head. Ryn blinked. What the... The wolf looked straight into his eyes. Not just a glance, a calculation. It was like being read, judged, and somehow accepted. Then the drone came. A high-pitched whirring broke the moment. A scout unit zipped over the trees, scanning with its beam. Ryn ducked into cover, cursing silently. It hadn't seen him yet. He turned to warn the wolf, but the creature had already vanished into the trees. Seconds passed. Then a low, animalistic growl echoed through the air. The drone's engine glitched mid-flight. Sparks burst. Metal crumpled. Something slammed into it from above with feral force, dragging it to the forest floor. A final mechanical shriek and then, silence. Ryn crept forward and peeked past the ferns. The drone lay crushed in the dirt. Torn wires, broken optics. On top of it, the wolf stood with its jaws red, chest rising and falling with quiet power. It looked at him again. This time, Ryn stepped forward slowly. "You're not just wild, are you?" The wolf sat on its haunches, tail still, eyes sharp. Then Ryn saw it, a small metal tag hanging from its thick neck fur. Burned, but not melted. Military issue. His breath caught. Project Apex, Fenrir Unit, Gen Code Alpha, 001. "No way," Ryn whispered. "I thought they shut this down." Project Apex. The secret program aimed at hybridizing Earth's most dangerous predators with human DNA, creating bonded units for survival warfare. It was banned by the Unified Defense Command right before the fall. Too dangerous. Too unpredictable. And yet, here it was, alive. Watching him. The wolf, Fenrir, it had to be, turned and walked toward a trail through the trees, then stopped, glancing back. Waiting. "You want me to follow," Ryn said quietly. He looked down at his rifle. His shaking hands. The scars on his arms. The old world had failed. Rules didn't mean anything anymore. What mattered now was survival, and maybe, just maybe, revenge. He took a step forward. Then another. And the last alpha wolf of Earth led him into the shadows. Ghost Protocol. The trail twisted through blackened trees and skeletal brush, silent as a grave. Ryn Kael moved behind Fenrir, stepping where the wolf stepped, crouching when it paused. The air was thick with soot and the stench of ozone, remnants of old orbital strikes. They walked for nearly an hour without a word, though the silence wasn't empty. There was a rhythm in Fenrir's movement, a purpose. This wasn't wandering. He knew where he was going. Ryn's ribs ached. Every breath felt like a dull knife pressing against his lungs. He hadn't eaten in almost 2 days, and the weight of his rifle was starting to feel like lead. Still, he followed. There was something about this wolf, this creature, that pushed back the fog in his mind. It didn't feel like giving up, not anymore. Eventually, they reached the entrance to a collapsed ravine. The jagged rock walls dipped down into darkness, partially sealed by roots and overgrowth. Fenrir growled low and began scraping at a pile of debris with his massive paws. A few broken branches and charred metal plates later, a steel hatch emerged from the ground. Ryn's eyes widened. No way. He brushed the dirt off the faded emblem stamped across the hatch. UDF, Black Sector 9. Military grade. Hidden base. Long forgotten, except not by Fenrir. The wolf stepped back, waiting. Ryn knelt beside the hatch and punched in the standard override code he hadn't used in over a decade. He didn't expect anything. But with a hiss of pressurized air, the lock clicked open. He chuckled softly. Well, I'll be damned. Inside, the corridor was cold and dark, lit only by the faint blue glow of emergency backup cells. Dust swirled in the air like ghosts, and every footstep echoed like it might wake the dead. Fenrir padded ahead, his shoulders brushing the narrow walls. The command center was buried at the end of the hallway. Still intact. Screens cracked, but operational. Ryn wiped the dust off one, activated the console, and waited as the system booted. A flicker. Then a faded hologram appeared, a woman in a lab coat, her voice hollow with age. This is Dr. Leah Hensley, Project Apex. If you're seeing this, Earth has fallen. Protocol Ghost has been initiated. The final Apex unit, Fenrir, is active. God help us. Ryn stared at the projection. I knew her, he whispered. She was part of the original Apex trials. Brilliant. Crazy. Said wolves were nature's perfect soldiers, just needed direction. The hologram continued, distorted but clear enough. The bond between Apex units and selected soldiers was meant to be deep, genetic. Synchronized senses. Emotional mirroring. A human's mind, a predator's body. The problem was, the military got scared. Shut us down. But we completed the bonding with one prototype. Alpha 001. She paused, and her voice softened. Ryn Kael. If you're alive, he's yours. Ryn's throat tightened. He turned to Fenrir, who now sat silently by the terminal, golden eyes fixed on him. You knew, Ryn said quietly. You've been waiting for me. In response, Fenrir stepped forward and pressed his head gently against Ryn's shoulder. Not aggressive. Not dominant. Familiar. Trusted. Suddenly, the console beeped, an alert flashing red across the screen. Unregistered signal detected. Proximity alert. Inbound scout unit. Ryn snapped into action, fingers flying across the console. They must have picked up residual movement. One scout, maybe two. Fenrir growled, low and steady. No, Ryn said. We fight. Just like old times. He grabbed a pulse mine from the storage locker, slung his rifle back over his shoulder, and moved with Fenrir to the upper level, a narrow ridge above the ravine. The drone came in fast, scanning in sharp, sweeping arcs. Sleek black. Armed. It hovered, paused, and then locked on. Too late. Fenrir leapt from the ridge with terrifying grace, crashing into the drone mid-air. Ryn fired at the second just behind it, the round connecting with its sensor eye. Sparks. Smoke. Screams of machinery. When it was over, only the hum of static remained. Ryn crouched beside Fenrir, who stood over the mangled remains. You're not just a weapon, Ryn said. You're a warning. He looked back toward the hidden base, the flickering image of Dr. Hensley still visible on the console. She wanted us to finish it. Fenrir let out a low huff, almost like agreement. Ryn rose to his feet and scanned the horizon. The Velzar thought Earth was broken, that the predators were gone. They were wrong. Rise of the Predator. Dawn broke in thin gray light across the valley, but warmth never came. The sun was no comfort anymore, just a memory of the world that had been. Ryn Kael stood at the mouth of a shattered cliffside, eyes narrowed toward the horizon. Smoke rose in the distance, alien fires burning human soil. Fenrir sat beside him, still and silent, ears twitching with every shift of the wind. They had scouted 3 Velzar camps over the past 2 days. Small patrol units. Recon squads. All heavily armed. But they were searching, not stationed. That meant one thing: they were hunting them. "They know you're alive," Ryn said, lowering his binoculars. "They don't like what you are." Fenrir growled softly. "And they sure as hell don't like that you're with me." He reached into his pack and pulled out a battered data tablet salvaged from the bunker. After hours of decrypting what was left of the Apex files, Ryn had found coordinates. Deep in the southern ridge, a facility marked simply as Core Site A. It had been the final stage of Project Apex, where true fusion was supposed to happen. Not just wolf and man working together. Something more. He showed the map to Fenrir. "It's 2 days west if we cut through the burned forest. Maybe faster if you're leading." Fenrir bumped his shoulder against Ryn's arm, rough, but not aggressive. As if to say, "Let's move." They traveled under cover, slipping between scorched trees and twisted wreckage. The forest had once been a sanctuary, now it looked like a battlefield of gods. Towering stumps, radioactive mist hanging low. Bones turned to dust underfoot. Fenrir moved like smoke between shadows. Ryn followed, rifle in hand, senses heightened. Somewhere along the way, he noticed his steps growing lighter. His hearing sharper. He could almost feel Fenrir's thoughts like distant pulses, flashes of instinct, of warning, of direction. It was like the bond was deepening on its own. Late that evening, as they paused near a dried-out creek, the wind shifted. Ryn froze. "Hear that?" Fenrir was already on his feet, growling low. A high-pitched clicking filled the air. Then shadows moved in the fog, tall, lean shapes cloaked in metallic armor. Velzar Reapers. 3 of them. Elite. They hadn't been spotted, yet. Ryn looked at Fenrir. No words were exchanged. None were needed. He pointed to the ledge above the ravine. Fenrir darted silently uphill, vanishing into the mist. Ryn crept forward, placing a trip mine beneath a fallen branch and circling wide. The Reapers moved in formation, scanning. Cold. Precise. Then, snap. Click. Boom. The first explosion scattered 2 of them, their visors flashing. As they reeled, Fenrir dropped from above with savage force, slamming into the third. Metal crunched under bone and fong. Ryn opened fire, hitting one in the chest and diving into cover. The second Reaper charged him with a blade arm extended, but Ryn spun low and drove his knife under the joint. Sparks flew. The final one shrieked and lunged at Fenrir, but the wolf spun mid-air, clamping down on the Reaper's neck and tearing it free with a feral roar. Silence followed. Ryn wiped blood from his forehead, panting. His chest rose and fell, heart thundering, but it wasn't fear. It was fire. He looked at Fenrir, who was pacing in a tight circle, blood dripping from his maw. The wolf's eyes were wild, yet focused. He was still in control. Barely. And so was Ryn. "What the hell's happening to me?" he whispered. He could feel it, pulsing in his bones. He wasn't just fighting better. He was better. Stronger. Faster. More connected. The Apex bond wasn't just military theory anymore. It was alive. He and Fenrir had become something new. Something the Velzar weren't prepared for. Predators. And this world, it was still theirs. Alpha reclaimed. The entrance to Core Site A was buried under layers of collapsed earth and broken steel. Faded UDF warning signs barely clung to the walls, half covered in moss and ash. A rusted gate groaned open as Ryn Kael and Fenrir stepped into the last breath of humanity's forgotten future. Inside, time had stopped. Cold lights flickered overhead, powered by the last reserves of the facility's core. The silence was deeper than the woods, like the air itself had been holding its breath for years, waiting. Ryn moved cautiously. Fenrir padded beside him, ears sharp, steps slow. The bond between them had grown stronger with every mile. Ryn didn't just sense Fenrir's movement, he felt them. Each breath, each heartbeat, echoed in sync. At the central chamber, a tall cylinder stood surrounded by dark terminals, the Apex fusion core. Holographic text blinked dimly across its surface. Status: Standby. User: Commander Ryn Kael, verified. A quiet voice echoed through the chamber, automated, ancient. Apex hybrid core, prepared for final sync. Subject Alpha, 001 ready. Initiate. Ryn looked at Fenrir. The wolf stared back, steady and unblinking. I don't know what this will do to either of us, Ryn said. We're already halfway there. This might push us past the edge. Fenrir stepped forward and placed one paw onto the base of the core. A choice. Ryn nodded. Let's finish it. He stepped into the fusion chamber. A hiss of air, a pulse of deep white light. The machine came alive. Heat surged through his veins. Ryn's body lifted off the floor, suspended. Images flashed, memories, instincts, raw emotion. Fenrir's heartbeat slammed against his own, the wolf's rage and memory flooding into his consciousness. Pain twisted through muscle and bone, but it was controlled. Directed. Not destruction. Evolution. And then, silence. The chamber doors slid open. Ryn stepped out. His vision was crystal clear. His hearing could isolate drops of water behind metal walls. His thoughts, his instincts, they were one. Fenrir stood beside him, but not as a separate being anymore. They were a single force. And the Velzar had just lost their advantage. A thunderous boom shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. They found us, Ryn muttered, already moving. Above ground, fire lit the sky. A dropship cut through the clouds, its claws slamming into the dirt. Troops spilled out, Velzar elites, armed with plasma spears and shock blades. At their center stood a towering figure in gold armor, Overseer Korith. The last predator, he hissed, stepping forward. You should have died with the rest of your kind. Ryn didn't reply. He didn't need to. He moved. In seconds, he was a blur of motion, sliding low, then leaping high, kicking off a stone pillar into the air. Fenrir charged from the opposite side, their movements perfectly coordinated. Korith parried Fenrir's jaws, only to be slammed in the ribs by Ryn's elbow, sending him flying into a tree. The bark exploded in a cloud of splinters. Velzar troops charged, but they didn't stand a chance. Ryn tore through them with feral grace, dodging plasma bolts, snapping bones with inhuman speed. Fenrir circled them like a storm, claws slashing, teeth crushing metal. It wasn't just battle. It was hunt. Korith rose again, snarling. You are a mistake. An animal pretending to be a man. Ryn stepped forward, eyes burning gold. No, he said. I'm a man who remembered what it means to be a predator. They clashed. Steel met claw, plasma struck skin, but Ryn didn't fall. The bond held. Their strength was not in brute force, but unity. Fenrir leapt as Ryn swept Korith's legs, bringing the alien overlord to the ground. One final strike, fong and fist together. Korith's body collapsed. The forest fell quiet. Smoke drifted over the battlefield as Ryn stood tall, Fenrir beside him. Broken metal and alien blood stained the earth, but the sky above was still wide open. Ryn walked to a nearby satellite beacon and keyed in a manual override. The old global comm system stuttered online. He broadcast a single message across the frequencies. To anyone listening, Earth is not lost. We are not prey. We are the last predators. And we are rising. Fenrir howled. And somewhere across the stars, something listened.